With the extraordinary challenge we face as a nation, we find ourselves in a predicament, a situation that finds us adjusting to a new world order. Staying at home to protect ourselves and the ones we love. Ultimately meaning that we have empty streets, many closed doors, and limited movement. Yet, it's in times like these that the Kenyan spirit of resilience, unity, and resolve has in the past come to life and emboldened us as a people. Even now, amid the uncertainty and gloom, there is hope. Hope that together we will overcome this challenge and rise again as a nation. And when we do, the magic of Kenya will be here to take us on a thrilling adventure. We will once again do what we love, take to our sunny beaches to revitalize, and we will once again go back to having unforgettable safaris. Without a doubt, we will be back to creating memories together over good food and company, hanging out with friends as we cheer on our favorite teams, and taking a break from the everyday hustle at the park or even with just a good night out. Together, we will overcome this moment, and we will be back to doing all the things we love doing most. Magical Kenya. The magic awaits.
Katoto shepu awe, ayawe, ayawe.
Tekenya katoto, kamini tekenya, tekenya katoto.
The corona calamity. More than 1.6 billion people are on the verge of losing their jobs before the end of this year. Gloomy statistics indeed, coming from the International Labour Organization. What exactly does this mean for the global economy and for the Kenyan economy as well? Our team of experts is in the house. They will be helping analyze these figures and exactly try to explain to us what is in store for the Kenyan economy in the year 2020. Good evening. This is Business Insight. At O'Brien Kimani is my Twitter handle, at KBC Channel 1. We would like to hear your views, and of course, we welcome your engagement with us. You are in time for the most comprehensive and concise coverage of today's event, not only here in Kenya, but around the world, right now, right here. But first, the highlights.
From the directives, some people have decided to sneak out of these areas and to relocate to the neighboring estates. Let me caution that this move is counterproductive and dangerous.
Concern as positive COVID-19 cases rise to 607, with Isiolo County recording its first case. Government enhances mitigation efforts as ongoing rains continue to wreak havoc, with power generating company KenGen releasing excess waters from Masinga Dam. And Education Cabinet Secretary defends virtual learning, saying schools will reopen once COVID-19 pandemic is brought under control. Welcome to the program. The Ministry of Health has expressed concerns over migration of a number of residents from cities Eastleigh Estate and Mombasa's Old Town in the wake of a lockdown that was announced on Wednesday. Health Chief Administrative Secretary Rashid Amani says the trend was worrying as it has acted to increase the risk of spreading the disease to other estates, even as the number of confirmed cases in the country rose by 25, bringing the total to 607. 3 more people have succumbed to the disease over the last 24 hours, with the cases of people dying from home rising fresh concerns.
Shall be cessation of movement in and out of Eastleigh area of Nairobi with effect from today, the 6th of May 2020 at 7 p.m.
Moments after the Ministry of Health announced cessation of movement in and out of Eastleigh and Old Town on Wednesday, a mass exodus was witnessed, with residents moving to other estates not under enhanced restrictions. The obtaining situation forcing the Ministry of Health to caution Kenyans against welcoming people from areas that have already been mapped out as red zones.
Remember, with a silent disease like this, one can be a silent killer. By moving out, there are the chances that you will be spreading this disease to others. Equally, if you are in a place that is visited by the plague, you do not leave that place. If you hear there is a land where there is a plague, you do not enter that land.
This coming as the number of positive cases in the country continued taking an upward trajectory, this time surpassing the 600 mark, with the number of infected counties rising to 18.
25 people have tested positive for coronavirus disease. This brings the total number of those who have tested positive to 607. We have today recorded an additional 7 new discharges or recoveries. This brings the total number of those who have recovered from the disease to 197. I am equally saddened to inform you that we have lost 3 other patients. 2 are from Nairobi, while 1 is from Mombasa.
Out of the 25 new cases, Nairobi accounted for 17, distributed in Eastleigh, which has 9 new cases, Kawangware and Parklands with 2 new cases, Riruta, South Sea, Umoja and Juja Road have 1 new case each. Mombasa recorded 1 new case over the last 24 hours, with Isiolo joining the list of infected counties after recording 1 case. The Ministry of Health is, however, concerned about an increase in community-based deaths after 2 people died at home in Mombasa on Wednesday, while another one passed on at home in Eastleigh.
And usually deaths that occur at community level are signs that these people have a severe form of the disease. Therefore, they are more symptomatic and therefore heavy shedders of the virus. Those who take care of them and those who are in close proximity to them are at a very high risk of acquiring the infection from them.
Nancy Okware, Channel 1 News.
We still remain with the COVID crisis, and it was business as usual in the city's Eastleigh Estate as the busy area woke up to the first day of partial lockdown on Thursday. Health Cabinet Secretary Mutahi Kagwe had on Wednesday announced the cessation of movement in and out of the estate for the next 15 days.
Nairobi's Eastleigh area. Residents of the busy estate would wake up to the sight of a contingent of security personnel who were in the area to ensure movement was restricted on the first day of the lockdown. Police manning several roadblocks mounted at the entry points across the estate that has been described as a COVID-19 hotspot. And with reports of significant movement out of the densely populated estate hours preceding the implementation of the cessation of movement order, it was hide-and-seeker security personnel enforced street guidelines to ensure no one leaves the estate. Locals are seen gathered outside their houses, most of them not observing social distancing to have a view of what is happening on the streets. And amid the lockdown, area residents remain troubled of possible implications of the directive just a few hours after it was imposed.
Mimi kuna mama mtoto na mimi nafanya biashara ya kitu ya kutabata leo anakula usiku, hakuna kitu kingine, hakuna mtu anatumia pesa na mimi nashikia mtoto yangu. Sasa kama niingia lockdown anakaa mimi na mtoto nakula nini? Sasa serikali kama anaingisha lockdown afadhali abatie watu chakula ama kitu ya kusaidia abatie watu.
15 days ni mingi sana kusema kweli, kulingana na mimi maoni yangu na mimi vile niko. Na pia Wakenya wengine pia wako hapa ni watu wako hustle kwa siku. Tungependa tupunguziwe hii maneno ama serikali ituangalie jama ingine namna ile ingeweza ku afford kutupatia sisi daily bread yetu.
Richard Mwika is a truck driver who came to the estate from Uganda on Thursday. He says even with proper documentation to allow him passage, he was denied entry into the area where he lives.
Na tushindwa mpaka ya Isili waliweka wapi? Sababu mimi mwenyewe nakaa section 3 lakini hapa roundabout ya Ngara ndio wamefunga. Siwezi fika nyumbani. Yenye nimetoka safari paka saa hata siyaoga. Nimezuiwa kufika nyumbani na nimetoka safari yote Uganda siyaona familia yangu. Sasa itabidi nitoke tena niende safari na siyaona familia na mimi nakaa Isili.
And with the lockdown requiring closure of markets, restaurants and eateries, fruit and vegetable vendors were still continuing with their business as usual.
It feels like a total lockdown. There is heavy police presence within Isli. So at the moment it looks like this is actually a total lockdown. So we're asking the government to revise the whole idea and to make sure this is protection rather than punishment.
With the 15-day cessation directive being implemented today in the area of Isili, the government now says it will hasten the process of mass testing in the same area. Yusuf Farah, Channel 1 News, Nairobi.
And it was chaos and confusion as residents of Mombasa Old Town struggled to adjust to the first day of a lockdown that restricted movement in and out of the area. The directive was announced on Wednesday after the area continued to record high numbers of COVID-19 positive cases, with authorities accusing the area residents of failing to observe set guidelines.
These were the chaotic scenes Thursday morning at the Markiti market in Mombasa's Old Town. Traders and those in the area to buy fresh produce rushing to beat the 10 a.m. deadline. The streets of Old Town remained deserted as police continued manning all possible escape routes out of the Old Town. For the residents, the radical move by the government caught them by surprise, only sitting in small groups pondering what had just hit them.
Kusema la kweli nimepata tabu sana kuanzia asubuhi natafuta chakula cha mtoto na mtoto wangu ambaye naishi naye hatumii chakula kingine isipokuwa wala viazi vitamu, kwa kizungu ni sweet potato. Nimezunguka mpaka hapa na nimepata mtu amenisai huyu mtu wa mkokoteni kulikuwa kumejaa. Nashukuru tumepata.
Ni shida kubwa kwa wale ambao wana uwezo watatumana kwa simu. Je, sisi ambao hatuna uwezo wala tuna mafrizi wala kuwekea chakula nyumbani ni tabu na tuna watoto.
Traders decrying what they say was a rushed decision to implement the lockdown directive as they called on the government to consider easing the restrictions.
Tumepata pigo sana, kuna mali baadhi wametoa mali zimenyeshwa na mvua na wengine hawajua wasipeleke wapi. Na baadhi tumeziacha ndani, hatujui zitadumu mpaka siku 15 wala zitaharibika. Kwa hivyo ni pigo kubwa kwa soko zote tatu.
Njaa ndio inatuleta hapa. Kama tumeshiba tunatafuta nini? Hakuna. Lakini watoto wasikuwa wakora, watoto wetu ni kama hawa. Hawajaajiriwa, hawana kazi. Wanasunguka tuna sisi tunawashika mkono tuendeni. Wasiharibike, wasikuwa wakora, wasipige watu. Leo wanalala na njaa, kesho wataenda wakorani. Watakuwa wakora, watapiga watu. Wataenda kuiba.
Ni mbaya sana vile anafanya. Kwa hivyo mgonjwa hii kama anatusaidia tulale ndani ya nyumba na hakuna faida yote tunapata. Heri afadhali tubate hiyo mgonjwa tukufe mara moja. Basi hiyo tu.
The concerns coming as Mombasa Governor Ali Hassan Joho said his administration has already identified 3 temporary markets within Old Town which will operate from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. every day during the cessation period. Joe says the residents will have access to healthcare services, which will be provided at makeshift health centers over the coronavirus pandemic.
Na sahi tumeshasema kwamba mahali panaitwa Pigot Place ndiyo pahali ambaye patafunguliwa senta ya matibabu, kutakuwa na madaktari kuangalia magonjwa mengine kando ya COVID-19, yani malaria, HIV, diabetes na any other disease. Kama uko nayo, then the place to be ni pale mahali panaitwa Pigot Place.
On my immediate right is the Markiti Open Air Market, and on my immediate left is the Clothes and Household Market, which will remain closed for the next 15 days. This is after a directive by the government to secede Old Town from Mombasa County due to the rising cases of COVID-19. From Markiti in Old Town, Mombasa County, I am Anburu.
We're today indeed there in Mombasa. Let's now shift gears, and state agencies are in race against time to rescue families devastated by the ongoing heavy rains and floodings. The downpour that has wreaked havoc in most parts of the country has claimed tens of lives, as reports indicating more fatalities emerge. Speaking while on a tour of flood-ravaged areas of Garissa, Devolution Cabinet Secretary Eugene Wamalwa rallied those living in flood-prone areas to move to safer grounds to avoid loss of lives.
The effects of the heavy rains continue to be felt, with 23 counties in the country now grappling with the aftermath of the rains. Garissa County residents residing in flood-prone areas, especially along River Tana, have once again been urged to move to higher grounds as Kengen started releasing excess waters from Masinga Dam, which began overflowing. Speaking in Garissa while distributing relief supplies to flood victims, Devolution CS Eugene Wamalwa spoke of the need for all necessary precaution to be taken by families at risk to avert calamities.
Kuna mvua nyingi sana katika taifa letu, na hii sio mvua ya kawaida. Ndiyo sababu kufikia jana lile bwawa la Masinga ambao ndilo kubwa kabisa na mabwawa mengine katika taifa letu yamejaa maji kabisa sababu ya mvua inayoendelea. Waziri wa Kawi Mheshimiwa Charles Keter ametutangazia jana ya kwamba tangu miaka ya 70 tangu mabwawa yetu haya yajengwe hajawahi jaa maji vile yamejaa hivi sasa.
In Muranga Merera area, which is considered as the county's food basket, has been worse hit by floods. After River Maragua broke its banks, some of the residents were forced to seek refuge in their neighbors' homes after water flooded their homes.
Mara kwanza kukuwa na mafuriko. Ile msimu uliopita tulikuwa na hii mafuriko, tukalilia serikali, wakaja wakatuongezea culverts. Lakini kulingana na vile tunaona zinahitajika tuongezewe box culvert kama zingine 2, na pia kama inawezekana hii barabara pia inuliwe juu.
Large tracts of land under plantations have also come under rain. In Kamahindo village of Lari constituency, a middle-aged man is feared dead after he was buried alive by a landslide that happened at a tea farm where he works as a casual laborer. Efforts by the residents to retrieve the body have yielded no fruits.
Walikuwa wanaenda kuchuna majani huko, lakini wakakutwa na mteremko. Wengine wakakimbia pande ile juu, mmoja akafunikwa. Hata saa hii tumeongea kwa ndani. Sasa tunaomba usaidizi wa serikali tusaidiwe.
This 7 people were reported dead in Western region, with about 9,000 households affected by the ongoing floods. Western Region Commissioner Ann Ngetich says over 9,000 households have been affected directly, with the floods sweeping away their homes, properties and crops.
The affected families have been successfully evacuated in each of the counties that I've mentioned. We have deployed lorries, 8 lorries and 3 police marine boats, and also over 20 private boats
Government agencies have begun construction of dikes that could not withstand the flood waters in the most affected areas. And as the effects of floods cause more pain, West Pokot Governor John Lonyangapuo and Kenya Red Cross Society officials were stuck on the dilapidated Kapsait-Kapsangar Sekuchion Road for hours as a heavy downpour rendered the road impassable. The governor and the group was forced to alight and walk for several kilometers as they waited for an excavator to clear the road.
Impassable. The governor himself, me, my car just couldn't start here for almost more than an hour. And this is a major road that's been supposed to be done by the national government. So I am appealing to the minister in charge of roads and public works and transport, as well as the PS and the committee in charge of roads and public works in the National Assembly. The chairman is Honorable Kusing, that they increase funding for roads in this mountainous county.
At least 194 people have died from the floods. Caroline Kamar reporting for Channel 1 News.
On to education matters, where Education Cabinet Secretary Professor George Magoha says the government is yet to make a conclusive decision on when schools will reopen. Appearing before the National Assembly Education and Research Committee, Magoha said the matter was an interministerial decision and not the sole decision of the Education Ministry. This coming as pressure mounts on government to issue a tentative date on when learning might resume. Gladys Mungai reports.
With 60% of 15 million learners both in primary and secondary schools reportedly missing out on virtual learning owing to lack of technology, Education Cabinet Secretary George Magoha had a rough time explaining to the National Assembly Committee on Education on when the government planned to reopen schools.
Collaboration with the other agents, be able to give us a kind of an indicative direction on how the ministry intends to manage this crisis.
If we are going to start all over again when things open up, then what is the objective of the current e-learning that the ministry engaged in? And is that objective, has it been passed on to the public? Because that is what is causing the anxiety. Then some are learning and some are not. But if the objective is clear and the other people know that, when it opens, I'll get what I need to pass the exam that will come before me.
But we should not pretend that we know when this pandemic is going to end. So when you honorable members are pinning me down to give specific dates and figures, can you allow me to say you are not being fair to me? I do not know whether the cases we shall release today are going to be 100 or 20 or 300. So when government is being cautious, it is not because we are flip-flopping.
The Ministry of Education telling the committee that materials being provided on television and radios have been vetted to ensure learners are fed with right information, with the government planning to offer special lessons for learners to ensure they catch up with those ahead in the curriculum once schools reopen.
Quality assurance teams to assess the coverage and impact of e-learning on learners across the country, and if so, could the chairperson table a report on the same?
I want to confirm to honorable members that yes, we have guidelines which are drawn from the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development Act, which guides all of us on this particular question on electronic media learning for schools.
The situation becomes completely out of control, then we shall have to bite the bullet. The children are alive and they are at home. So what? They are at home and they are safe and they are alive. And if it means that they have to stay for a year, so be it. It is not only in Kenya where this is happening. But who knows? We could be in control in 2 months and we open and go to school. So please don't Don't open a metal pipe and force me to say, give us dates.
The assurance coming even as pressure mounted from a section of political leaders who want a tentative date on when schools might resume learning.
What the country needs from the ministry are definitive messages on the way forward. As the bag continues to remain with us, it is expected that the Ministry of Education could get bona fide leaders of the key stakeholder entities in education in a constructive dialogue to reflect together and plan the way forward. So far, the Ministry of Education has only made random and ad hoc pronouncements.
ANC leader Musele Mudavadi says it's important, especially given that thousands of learners gearing up for the national examinations are faced with uncertainties regarding their destinies.
Syllabuses have not been covered and may not be covered. Our exam-based education is about syllabuses. We cannot change direction in the midstream to pretend that all is well.
In the meantime, the ministry says those offering remedial classes without the government approval will be apprehended. For Channel 1 News, I'm Gladys Mungai.
Sounding the battle bells. We'll be back with more details why nurses or health workers are threatening to go on strike. This is Business Insight.
Caught in a landslide.
This Friday, 8 May, the country holds its 9th change of guard in the military. General Samson Jaffa Mwathethe, who has served for 5 years, will hand over the reins to General Robert Kibochi in an elaborate and colorful military ceremony. Join us this Friday from 9 a.m. as we bring you the exclusive live coverage of the change of guard at the helm of the Defense Forces, only on KBC Channel 1.
Unions representing health workers are threatening to down their tools if outstanding issues about their salaries and allowances are not addressed by the 18th of this month. According to the union representatives, the bulk of health workers have not been considered for increased perks and allowances during the coronavirus pandemic.
The country could be staring at a possible health crisis at a time that it is struggling to contain the spread of coronavirus epidemic if health workers make good their threat to down tools. Led by Kenya National Union of Nurses Secretary General Seth Panyako, the health workers are questioning the criteria used by the Ministry of Health to allocate allowances to frontline health workers who are tirelessly fighting the COVID-19 pandemic, saying his members will have no option but down their tools if their concerns are not addressed within 11 days.
Yes, we are all frontline health workers, but the level of risk varies from one health worker to another, from the same cadre but where you are stationed. For example, you take a doctor working in Afya House, sitting in Afya House and taking tea of 89,000 per day. He's going to get 20,000. A doctor who is working in Mbakathi right now, in isolation room, is going to get 20,000. Is that fair?
So allowances must be able to be considered who is being affected. And that is why you have heard the General Secretary for Canaan has said that you cannot give the same person who is just seated in the boardroom with someone who is in the isolation center, giving them a different amount, yet you are considering someone who is not doing anything.
In the meantime, a section of political leaders from Embu County have raised concern over the danger posed by the miraa trade in the transmission of COVID-19 disease. The leaders say some miraa traders have been sneaking to Nairobi and back.
Tafadhali waombeni, kwa sababu wale wako na familia, wako na baba, wengine mama, wazee. Wakitoka huko wakituletea corona, hii sherehe ambayo tunasema hakuna corona Embu, tunaweza kuipata, but God forbid, we should not.
We are all in it. So, kila mtu ako na jukumu ya kuparticipate ya kumaliza huu ugonjwa. Kwa sababu, when we are told to be resilient, when we are told to wash hands, when we are told to keep social distance, it is you. If you don't keep it, when you kutakufa.
The concern coming as the Embu County government summoned over 100 Mogoka drivers and other traders of the stimulant for COVID-19 disease testing.
Watu wa miraa wameshindwa sana na kukeep distance. Hata tukiwapeleka stadium, tumeona wameshindwa. So hapo ndipo tunaangalia sana because hatutaki kuona watu wetu wakiwa na hii ugonjwa.
And police in Lodwar have arrested 23 teachers while offering online classes from offices of a non-governmental organization operating in the region. According to authorities, the group that has been taken in for mandatory quarantine is guilty of holding an illegal gathering in the institution. Police are currently in pursuit of 38 others who are said to have escaped when police raided the institution.
Kufika hapa tumekuta watu 61 wakiwa wanaendelea na mafunzo, wakifundisha mambo ya kompyuta, mambo ya online training. Wote tumewapata wakiwa kwa darasa moja, wakiwa 61.
Beatrice Getonyang-Etich, Channel 1 News.
Rift Valley Regional Commissioner George Natembear has warned against the use of illegal routes along the borders to gain access into in and out of the county. Natembear, who too at the Namanga border post, said that anyone found using illegal routes will be forcefully quarantined for 14 days.
Perishable goods worth millions of shillings have stalled at Namanga border as truck drivers await to be tested for COVID-19 before being cleared. Tens of truck drivers are decrying possible losses they may incur as they will have to wait for a minimum period of 48 hours after their samples have been taken before they can be issued with clearance certificates, a period they say is long enough for their goods to go bad.
Tumeambiwa tangu jana kuna watu wanayokuja kutupima, mpaka sasa hatujawaona.
Hata hivi tunaongea na wewe, kuna magari yetu bado yamezuiliwa ambayo yalitoka jana, na directive yenyewe tumeisikia jioni. Sasa nyinyi mtuambie, kwa sababu hii ni perishable goods, zitaharibika. Yani goods ni ya ukasi, siku mbili tu imeharibika, sana vitunguu. Wakulima watapoteza pesa zao.
This even as Rift Valley Regional Commissioner George Natembear, during his tour of the Kenya-Tanzania border, maintained that the testing exercise will continue as planned, warning that anyone found using illegal routes in and out of the country will be forcefully quarantined for 14 days.
The county commissioner and his team, all the way to Nyumba Kumi, are going to be on the lookout,
using those local structures to ensure that anybody who moves around, who moves to Tanzania or moves to Kenya, that kind of careless movement, they are quickly identified and quarantined.
Elsewhere, drama ensued at the Kenya-Uganda border as truck drivers along the Great Lake region downed their tools, complaining of harassment from the officials from the neighboring county of Uganda. The drivers say that customs officers from Uganda reject the transit entries wherever they arrived at the port of destination.
Wakija kwetu hatuwabagui, tukienda kwao wanatubagua hivyo tu na kupigwa na nini.
They are also lamenting over what they term as inhuman treatment at the inland depot in Kampala during the sanitization exercise aimed at averting the spread of coronavirus.
Unamwagiliwa dawa, unasprayiwa kuja kwa gari ndani. Which kind of system is that? Yeah, in those ICDs, all of them.
Umepeleka mzigo kwa tajiri, inafaa achukue zile document akusainie, sawa? Kuspray ile sanitizer sio problem hiyo, but anakuambia I cannot sign that document kwa sababu iko na corona.
For Channel 1 News, I'm Safin Achieng Oma.
The International Council of Nurses says at least 90,000 healthcare workers across the globe are believed to have been infected with COVID-19 amid reports of continuing shortages of protective equipment. Globally, more than 3.8 million people have been infected with the new coronavirus, with over 265,000 people succumbing to the contagious and at least 1.3 million people recoveries, according to data compiled by Johns Hopkins University in the U.S.
Almost 90,000 health workers across the globe are believed to have been infected with COVID-19, with International Council of Nurses urging authorities to help prevent the virus from spreading among staff and patients. The findings were revealed amid the United Nations' new appeal for $4.7 billion in funding to protect millions of lives and stem the spread of coronavirus in fragile countries. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump is moving ahead with plans to reopen the United States and get the economy going again. This is despite concerns that the number of infections are not yet under control. And Brazil, one of the world's emerging coronavirus hotspots, is reporting a record number of cases and deaths, with the health minister flagging the possibility of strict lockdowns, particularly in hard-hit areas. In Poland, governing parties say they have agreed to postpone a presidential election on May 10th after it became clear the poll could not be held via a postal vote because of the coronavirus pandemic. Spain, on the other hand, has extended the state of emergency imposed to combat the coronavirus pandemic for 2 more weeks from Sunday, allowing the government to control people's movement as it gradually relaxes a national lockdown. Elsewhere, some of the restrictive measures in the United Kingdom will be lifted from Monday. Britons will once again be allowed unlimited exercise outside, and people will be encouraged to return to work if safe. The development coming as British statistics indicated that black people and those in Indian, Bangladeshi and Pakistani ethnicity have a significantly higher chance of dying from COVID-19 than white people. Africa reported more than 50,000 cases of coronavirus across the continent over the last 1 day, according to Africa Center for Disease Control and Prevention. South Africa tops the list with almost 8,000 confirmed cases as the World Health Organization expresses worry of community spread in West Africa. The mountainous kingdom of Lesotho, which is completely surrounded by South Africa, is the only African country that has not reported a single case of COVID-19.
The outbreak of COVID-19 has presented a host of challenges, especially to persons with physical needs. But how do you ensure that hearing impaired children are not facing further barriers, especially with the closure of schools, and that their families across information and resources to support their special needs children?
So for children with special needs who are deaf, it's very important that, one, for you as the caregiver, that you're being able to communicate that information that they're seeing on the TV that could be frightening to them, in whether it's a child who uses a hearing aid or a child who needs to be signed for, that you sign and communicate what's going on with COVID-19. And when you go to the hospital, it's important that you explain to the healthcare provider that your child is hearing impaired, and that way the healthcare provider is able to communicate in a way that whether it's someone who already knows how to sign, where we need an interpreter, that the child can be explained for what's happening to their body, as for example, if blood is being taken or they're getting swabs at the back of their noses. It's important that that information is relayed to the child prior to you touching the individual. So that information the parent has to communicate to the healthcare giver so they understand what's the method of communication for that child who is being attended to in the hospital.
And companies, institutions, farms and buildings encroaching on riparian land and discharging affluent to rivers and other water sources risk closure. The government says all structures neighbouring rivers and other water sources must adhere to set guidelines. Details of these and other highlights in the County News Roundup.
Early Thursday at the Boulevard Hotel, Nairobi County, a fact-finding mission is underway. Environmental watchdog NEMA has embarked on a mission to establish which facilities have been flouting environmental laws such as encroachment, as well as discharging effluent into Nairobi River. According to Joel Kitili of the Ministry of Environment and Forestry, the government will continue to crack the whip on facilities that have encroached on riparian land, as well as those discharging effluent to rivers and water bodies.
That they were discharging effluent to the river, but we were able to repair that. We did our own survey and we were able to identify the point that was yesterday, but it was repaired. As we are speaking now, that effluent is not being discharged to the river.
Meanwhile, Nyandarua County Administration has put in place measures to mitigate the ongoing heavy downpour across the region. Nyandarua Governor Francis Kimemia says his administration has acquired heavy earth movers and equipment which includes rollers, graders, shovels and tippers worth over 500 million shillings as it intensifies efforts to repair all damaged roads across the county.
We have created a cabinet emergency team so that we can make sure that we respond to areas where fire, roads are cracked or broken down, bridges are carried over, and we can at least minimize the suffering of our people.
I shall always, truly and diligently serve.
Elsewhere, Bomet County Secretary Stella Langat has been sworn in. This comes as former County Secretary Evelyn Rono obtained a court order barring Langat from assuming office until a case against her was determined. Employment and Labour Relations Court in Nairobi through Lady Justice Maureen Nonyango issued the orders questioning the decision by Governor Hilary Barchok to terminate the services of Rono. A group of waitresses in Kirinyaga County has won the hearts of many after resolving to sensitize members of the community on COVID-19. The women who are currently jobless after bars in the country closed say they took up the responsibility to those who may not access necessary information, especially the elderly.
Tukafikiria tunaweza jitolea, tununue hizo sanitizers, tununue masks, then tuanze kuzunguka sana sana tukitafuta wale wa mama wazee wenye hawa afford hizo vitu.
Reporting for Channel 1 News, I'm Jackie Wambiru.
Let's turn on to business where now Kenyan lenders restructured loans amounting to more than 200 billion shillings, according to data from the Central Bank of Kenya. The 7 biggest banks accounted for the largest loan restructure with 176 billion shillings as at the end of April this year. CBK Governor Patrick Njoroge has told the Senate that tourism industry had the most loan terms renegotiated, followed by real estate.
On March 23rd this year, Central Bank of Kenya's Monetary Policy Committee lowered the central bank rate from 7.25% to 7% and cash reserve ratio to 4.25% from 5.25% as part of policy actions to cushion the financial sector from adverse effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. CBK announced the measures freed more than 35 billion shillings to commercial banks to directly support borrowers facing repayment challenges. Today, CBK Governor Patrick Njoroge told the Senate Ad Hoc Committee on COVID-19 that By the end of last month, 11 commercial banks and 1 microfinance bank had been granted approval to access 17.6 billion shillings freed from the reduction in the cash ratio. CBK says the remaining 17.4 billion shillings is likely to be exhausted by the end of this month, forcing commercial banks to come up with more innovative liquidity measures. Njoroge has further told the committee that Kenyan lenders restructured loans amounting to more than 200 billion shillings in the month of April as the pandemic choked loan repayment plans. Equity Bank, KCB Cooperative, ABSA and Standard Chartered banks were the most affected, reorganizing more than 176 billion shillings in their loan books. Njoroge says tourism, real estate, construction and trade accounted for 31, 17.2, 17 and 12.4% of all restructured loans. O'Brien Kimani for Business NewsHour.
Kenya's fight against COVID-19 has received a major boost after the International Monetary Fund approved a 78.3 billion shillings package. The fund will also help meet Kenya's urgent balance of payment needs stemming from the outbreak of the pandemic. IMF has also urged Treasury to embark on serious fiscal consolidation in a bid to reduce macroeconomic shocks once the virus subsides.
Since Kenya reported its first case of the deadly coronavirus on the 12th of March this year, the economy has taken a serious beating due to the disruptions in supply chain and government-imposed curfew that has choked business activities. The government has already slashed GDP growth forecast for this year by half, as analysts project that the country is likely to dip into recession in the worst-case scenario. The National Treasury has been forced to adjust its expenditure plan to avail emergency funds to help deal with the pandemic. The government has further launched an emergency fund appeal to shore up efforts to fight the virus and seal a yawning gap in revenue collection. The World Bank also approved a 5.3 billion shillings facility to support the fight against COVID-19 as confirmed cases soared, stretching health services. The IMF forecast growth of 1% this year for Kenya. The approved emergency funding requested by Kenya is expected to help deal with the pandemic. Kenya will get 78.3 billion shillings from the short-term liquidity line launched mid-last month to provide liquidity support for members facing potential short-term balance of payments difficulties due to the pandemic. African countries have approached the fund to tap the 1.8 trillion shillings fund in a bid to ameliorate the impact of the virus on their economies. IMF says the funds will provide much-needed resources for physical interventions to safeguard public health and support households and farms affected by the crisis. Kenya has undertaken to carry out a detailed independent post-crisis auditing of COVID-19 related expenditures and publish the results, according to the report by IMF.
Construction of the multi-billion shillings Thwake Dam in Makueni County is likely to miss completion deadline as the contractor cuts workforce to comply with the government orders geared towards containing the spread of COVID-19. China Gezuba company says it has furloughed close to 500 workers to ease congestion at the site. According to Representative Apopo Lentana, only 32% of the workforce has been done to date.
Thwake Dam, whose construction began in 2017, is expected to cost 63 billion shillings in a joint funding between the Government of Kenya and the African Development Bank. According to the contractor, China Gezuba Company, construction of the dam is facing hurdles as work rate declines thanks to coronavirus pandemic, which has seen the government institute measures to halt the spread of the deadly respiratory disease.
Currently, the percentage of the works, the dam, we are now at 32%, and we hope in the next few months we shall recover and take care of the months that are lost.
Representative Apopo Lentana says the slow work rate is attributed to decongestion of the site after the firm reduced the number of employees from 1,200 to 700.
The works have been going on normally. At times we work 24 hours when needed. However much the rains have disrupted a little bit, but we will continue to have work at 100%.
The company also carries out routine screening of workers, distributing masks and reaching out to the local community in order to guarantee safety on site.
Nashukuru bado Kazi si mbaya, hata kama tuende nyumbani kwa mafamilia, lakini tunang'ang'ana tu.
Watu walipunguzwa, wengine wakaenda manyumbani, lakini sisi tukambaki watu wachache. Kampuni ikatualifu lazima watu wahame manyumbani, wakaribia karibu na kazi, ndio wao wanatembea kuingia kazini.
Hapo kwa China wamekuja siku hii ya leo, wakatupima, wakatufanyia mengi kwa njia ile ambayo inayofaa.
Engineers have already embarked on major works on site, which include erecting a mega tunnel to divert river earthy flow to drylands for excavation works at the main riverbed.
We hope that by the end of this year, we shall be at almost completion of this section, Tunnel A, and then we have Tunnel B on the other side.
Tunnel A will rise to about 700 meters high when complete. Once the two tunnels are built, they will be used as a substitute waterway where the river will change course and join original path downstream. Ronald Willie, Business Insight.
To enhance engagement with project stakeholders and investors in order to accelerate the realization of Konza City. This follows the relocation of staff and services to Konza Complex located along Nairobi-Mombasa Road. Elsewhere, Kenyans still prefer apartments even as rental prices record a slight increase of 0.4% in the first quarter of this year, according to the latest Housing Price Index first quarter report. Head of Development Consulting and Research, Sakina Hassanali, says the current figures, however, don't capture the full impact of COVID-19 on the property market.
The real estate sector remained largely depressed in 2019, attributed to, among others, protracted challenging economic environment across the past 12 months that led to inaction by some home buyers and less demands by landlords. That notwithstanding, a majority of Kenyans who went into the market opted for apartments in the first quarter of 2020. According to the House Consult report, house prices slightly edged up by 0.9% over the quarter, driven by mild performance from single-family residences and semi-detached markets, which recorded a 1.3% and a 0.9% growth respectively, sustaining the trend recorded in the previous quarter. As such, it would be cheaper to rent in Kiambu, Kitengela and Mlolongo, unlike in Syokimau, Athi River, Rwaka and Rongai, whose rental prices have held steady in the first quarter, while Ngong rental prices have increased by 64%. On the other hand, apartment rental prices in Nairobi suburbs have dropped in Kileleshwa, Lang'ata, Riverside, Upper Hill and Westlands. Rental prices remain, however, unchanged in Lavington, Kilimani and Parklands. House Consult Sakina Hassanali says uncertainties and depressed appetite force some home sellers to reduce asking prices properties. According to the report, those who favor detached and semi-detached housing found it cheaper to purchase one in Tigoni than Loresho, whose prices went up by 3.6% in the last quarter. Overall, it is more expensive to purchase a house in Ridgeways than Juja, with the latter recording a 9.3% slump in sales, while Ridgeway property sale prices surged. Consult Sakina Hasnali says in the next quarter, rental prices and asking prices are likely to adjust downwards as the populace deals with reduced incomes. However, this change may not be huge as land and property is usually insulated against short-term shocks. Regina Manyara Guitar reporting for Channel 1 Business.
We are living in the era of coronavirus, which has ravaged the global economy and, of course, disrupted the supply chain, affecting global growth, and, of course, billions of people are likely to lose their jobs. That is according to international labor organizations. Here in Kenya, the Ministry of Labor says hundreds of thousands of people are also likely to lose their job as well. And so we'll be engaging labor experts to advise us on the way forward. And let's first of all have a look at how the pandemic is unfolding globally. You know, at this point, 3.7 million people have been infected so far with the coronavirus. And out of these, 1.2 million people have actually recovered. That is the good story that you don't get to hear a lot. And unfortunately, 271,000 people, and this figure keeps on changing, have already succumbed to this deadly virus. Here in Kenya, these are the latest statistics as presented today by the Ministry of Health. And the number of tested people in the last 24 hours stands at 1,075. Out of these, 25 cases are tested positive, and 7 people have so far recovered from this disease. And in the last 24 hours as well, quite unfortunate here, we have lost 3 people in the country. These are the latest figures from the Ministry of Health. We look at the coronavirus and labor relations right here. That is coming up next. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back shortly.
KBC, in collaboration with the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, is broadcasting enhanced out-of-class learning on radio, television and online. Catch the lessons every weekday on KBC Channel 1 from 2 to 4 p.m, on KBC English Service and 15 FM from 9:15 a.m. to 5 p.m, and Radio Taifa from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. KBC English Service, Radio Taifa and 15 FM are also available countrywide on the free-to-air Signet digital TV platform, or log on to www.kbc.co.ke for live streaming, or download the KBC Online app on Google Play Store. Kenya Broadcasting Corporation, ensuring learning no matter what.
Next on
Eyes for Allah, nothing but Allah. Ba is the beginning of Bismillah. Tais for taqwa, bewaring of Allah.
Kufunga kwako ni kujinyima tu chakula peke yake. Kufunga kunahusisha pia funga ya macho, funga ya masikio, funga ya ulimi, funga ya mikono na ya miguu. Yaani inamaanisha usisikize kile ambacho
Welcome back. I told you we want to discuss labor matters in the era of coronavirus. 1.6 billion people are likely to lose their jobs. This is according to the International Labor Organization. Here in Kenya, so far, the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection indicates that about 134,000 people have so far lost their jobs or have been forced to go or proceed on unpaid leave, and a number of them actually have also taken pay cuts. What does this exactly mean for the labor market here in Kenya? George Masese is the senior legal officer at Federation of Kenya Employer. He's now joining us to help us understand the legal implications of these, as well as the labor implication of the whole scenario. George, asante sana for joining us. Thank God you have a job still, right?
Thank you for having me. Yes, I thank God that I have a job.
Tell me this. This is absolutely unprecedented, not only here in Kenya, but the world over. How is this likely to leave the labor market looking like?
This crisis actually is a worldwide crisis. That is one. And we are not the only ones who are experiencing a labor crisis in Kenya or in the world. But first and foremost is that the governments all over the world, of course, have responded to this crisis. And if you look at the strategies that have been used by various governments to respond to this crisis, basically are the same. Apart from maybe countries in Europe that have the financial muscle, of course, their companies can sustain the economy, even if it's not working for quite some time. But in Kenya, which is a third world country, of course, from last year we could see that the economy was not performing well.
And I actually don't like, the third world country term.
Yes,
I prefer a developing economy.
A developing economy.
Yeah.
Let me use that term. If you look at from last year, basically we were not performing well. Most of the sectors in the economy were not performing well. And come this year, in March, when the World Health Organization now declared this coronavirus a pandemic, of course, many sectors, mostly aviation industry, tourism industry, hospitality industry, hotels, were the first ones really to be affected because of the regulations that were put in place by the government. And secondly, because of what was happening in Europe, because if you look at the agriculture sector, like floriculture and horticulture, there was no business in terms of we were not exporting. So therefore, that was the first casualty. And before the government came in to put in regulation to cushion employers and, of course, employees from sliding into abject poverty, already tourism industry was affected and agriculture sector was affected. So what does that mean? We don't look at these aspects in terms of the legal implications, because once we start putting legal implications to contracts of employment or to labor issues, then there's a likelihood that we are going to miss the point. We don't have to look at that in the labor sector. We can look at it maybe in the legalistic way when we come to what measures do we put in place to assist companies they don't slide or they don't go bankrupt. At that one we can look at that aspect of a legalistic way of solving that crisis. But looking at labor and what actually the Federation and the COTU and the government have done through the Ministry of Labor is that they have come up with a raft of proposals and ideas on how to assist the labor really cushion those employees who are earning maybe, let me say, minimum wage in this country. And those measures basically, and the negotiation around that is centered on a very strong tool that we always use called social dialogue. That is the only solution that we are going to use, that's the only tool we are going to use in this country to really solve the crisis in labor. One, there are, of course, to avoid people losing their jobs, of course, a large number. What the companies or what the employers have done is that they have sat down with unions, where there are unions, and also sat down with individual employees and agreed on variation of those terms to accommodate a large number of people having something on the table at the end of the day. That is one aspect whereby I commend the employer in terms of agreeing that yes, we don't have to go the redundant way and the people lose their jobs. And actually that has not been an option on the table to negotiate or talk about. The other aspect is where the government has also come in and said, look, we are going to do what we call cash transfers to those to the vulnerable in the society. And then when you look at the data that we have, of course we have challenges in terms of how do we implement these cash transfers. Of course, it's admitted by even the ministry that we have a challenge in that because we never expected this pandemic, of course, and it came by surprise. Yeah. So for the little data that we have, the government has always has been able to use that data to do what we call cash transfers to less vulnerable. And of course, when you talk about those vulnerable in the society, we are talking mostly of old age. Those are the people we talk about, but we also forget to talk about those people living with disability. And so therefore, it is something that I think needs a national discussion on how do we do the mapping of vulnerable and how do we assist these vulnerable in the society. So I think as we stand right now, yes, men have lost their jobs. We can't deny that fact. But we must also commend the employees and the employers and the unions for coming up with formulas of retaining a number, of course, in jobs. And as we speak right now, there are various mechanisms that are used, of course, to cushion and have most of the employees at work, even if not at once, but at least even if at different times. But at the end of the day, they can have something on the dip. And another aspect where, again, we are trying to assist as employers and the unions, we are trying to look around how do we expand the social protection to, let's say, maternity leaves. We are talking about sick leaves, and many other things that actually surround employment contracts. So, like maternity, we have of course experienced where an employee is being sent on unpaid leave, yes, but again, she goes on maternity, and then we ask ourselves, there's no legal way that you are going to handle this. If you handle it in a legal way, then that lady cannot benefit from that maternity payment, right?
George,
yes.
Let me ask you this. I mean, definitely this pandemic cannot be blamed on employers, and neither can it be blamed on employees.
Yes.
But as employers, what mechanisms or strategies are you arriving at, before deciding or before coming up with a solution or with okay, what do I say? What are you looking at before you decide that as a company, everybody's going to take a 50% pay cut, 60% pay cut? What grounds are you, first of all, analyzing before you come up with such a decision?
Thank you. It depends which sector, again, we are working, the company.
Broadly speaking.
Yes. The sector, of course, it's one of the factors that you look at. And broadly speaking, is the cash flow. If there's no business, for example, right now, we know that the supply chain is actually not the same way it used to be before coronavirus. So even in the essential services that people are allowed, of course, to work normally and manufacture whatever they manufacture for the consumer. One, the consumer does not have money in the pocket to buy that product. That is one, because it's not working. Supplying these products is not the same as used to supply. Of course, the supply chain is not the same. So therefore, you find that the cash flow of a company is going down. So then at that point, you may have to decide that I may need to discuss, of course you cannot unilaterally decide that as an employer, this is what I'm going to do, or rather this is what I'm going to pay my employees. The first and foremost thing that you do is that you must share that information with your employees. You must agree with your employees that at the situation where we are, for us to sustain this enterprise, we must do a pay cut of this nature, or rather, if we don't do a pay cut, then we must bring in this kind of strategy that is going to assist this company see post-COVID-19, because we have post-COVID-19, whereby, again, of course, we need all these employees at workplace. So it is not a decision that you take as an employer unilaterally. It's a decision that you discuss with your employees, and that is contained in the MOU that was signed between the government, KOTU, and the Federation of Kenya Employers. Yes.
I mean, when you look at the Employment Act of 2012, I mean, it has laid out four grounds an employer can use to suspend or to terminate a contract with an employee. And one of them is a mutual agreement. The second one is if the employee is employed on a casual basis. And the third one is if the employee falls sick. And the fourth one is if the employee dies. The law never anticipated a situation whereby coronavirus was likely to come into play.
Yes, very true.
So are we operating in a lacuna in this case, or what is guiding employers when they are deciding to terminate the terms of engagement with an employer?
Various instruments, of course, are used in making those decisions, of course, which are, you can say, legally binding. That means you look at the Employment Act. Usually we don't have really, like European countries, we don't have what we call mutual separation as such in our case. But we do have a very important section that has not always been useful to many, but right now I think even the unions are accepting. Section 10.5 of the Employment Act, which provides for when you want to vary terms of a contract of an employee, you must seek permission, or you must consult with that employee and agree. So this is the only part that is very key in the Employment Act, which is now guiding the both parties. And if you look at that section, the way it is crafted, it is actually that aspect of what I said, social dialogue. So it is part of what we say, making the borrowing from the international practice or conventions and recommendations from ILO, and then making them, or rather coining a law around that concept to assist in terms of crisis. For example, a crisis like this one, Section 10.5 has come in handy to assist in terms of how we regulate our relationship. And that's why you've not heard people saying, if you are on unpaid leave, you are terminated. The variation of the terms, still you are in employment. It's only that we have varied these terms in this nature. Yeah.
And we have seen a situation whereby, people who feel, or employees who feel aggrieved by pay cuts, they have moved to court. And we know that the courts are operating, on a virtual basis. How is this likely to pan out? On one hand, you have a company that is struggling, with cash flow. And on the other hand, you have employees who feel aggrieved that at the end of the day, they're going to take 30%, 40%, 50% less than what they are used to. How is this likely to pan out at the end of the day?
I think for that case whereby employees have gone to court, it is a right for any person to go to court, of course, if you feel aggrieved. And during the pandemic, the laws have not been suspended. The constitution has not been suspended. Labor rights are still operating. That does not take away the rights of an employer in terms of how to manage the business. If you have a reason as to why, and you have a course of action, and you feel like you have been denied an opportunity at workplace to express yourself or hear your views, then you have a right, of course, to move to the higher level, of course, going to court. And when you are in court, it does not necessarily mean that you cannot determine the outcome. It depends on case-to-case basis. But of course, we keep telling employers, look, employees will be going to court and getting orders barring you from taking certain actions because you are violating Section 10.5 and you are violating that aspect of social dialogue, right? If you violate these tenets or these principles that people have worked so hard to ensure that there's a very good relationship between the employer and the employee, or rather the owner of capital and the ones who is providing labor, then it means you may end up in problems. And one of the problems that you will end up into is incurring legal costs in terms of going to court, of course, to defend your actions. And there's a likelihood that the court may not agree with you if you make a decision unilaterally. But of course, again, the court may agree with you for the decision you make, of course, after rigorous court processes, which may take time, for you to prove that actually you made a decision based on certain facts which are okay, but the problem is you did not discuss with the employees.
Tell me this, you know, what is likely to happen, for example, if an aggrieved employee moves to court because, you know, their salaries or wages, you know, have been slashed by a certain margin, and then the court says, as an employer, it was wrong. You violated the right of your employees by slashing their wages or salaries, you know, without proper consultation. Yet, when you look at the facts on the ground, this company is not in a position to make money. What happens in a situation like that?
Yes, that's what I said. By the time you prove your case that the decision you made was a proper decision at that time, but the process was wrong, you have been forced to keep on paying these employees the same salary for a period of court case does not end tomorrow if you file today. A court case takes a longer period. So it means that a wrong decision may end up making a company bankrupt because of such kind of processes whereby we don't consult. The court will make an order first that don't vary the terms. But then if you had consulted, of course, you could not find yourself in that situation. So maybe 6 months down the line, you are able to prove to the court. Of course, the courts also work on evidence. They are human beings. They don't live in another planet and they come here just to deliver, as one of the judges was saying, to deliver judgments. They live with us. They understand the crisis. So they may agree with an employer that, yes, fine, you made the right decision, you were doing the right thing at that time, of course, to protect everybody. The problem was that you failed to carry out proper consultation. So the punishment here will be, by the time this case is being determined, even at that intellectual stage, an employer, of course, has been forced to pay some salaries, which he was not really able to pay. If he had consulted and moved on with that consultation, could not find himself in that kind of situation. Yeah.
And what happens in a situation whereby, you know, for example, when a lot of, you know, employees have been followed or they have been forced to work, you know, to stay at home, you know, with half a salary or something like that, and you're likely to see a serious drop in productivity. So as an employer, how do you balance the interest of the employer and the interest of the employee in a situation like this?
One, there are two competing interests, of course, in this situation. The competing interest of keeping the enterprise and also the other aspect of ensuring that the employee also is protected at this particular time. So it is really not an ease, or rather you cannot have a quick answer to that. But what actually happens is that employers must strive at this particular time, and that is what exactly they have done, to mitigate these effects of coronavirus from affecting employees to an extent that it affects their productivity. Of course, productivity is going to be affected. That is for sure, and nothing much can be done. The economy is a full circle, right? I may not determine exactly how you deal with your landlord. I may not determine really about your lifestyle and other things, but the enterprise is able to pay you this, right, for you to survive. So it's upon that employee, and that's why we say mostly when you announce these kind of changes, give notice to employees, all right? And they give letters to employees. They use these letters to negotiate with the landlords. They use these letters to negotiate with the banks.
But in a situation like, the pandemic, I mean, it came without any warning.
Of course.
I mean, just in March, Kenya recorded its first case.
Yeah.
And in the same month, curfews were imposed. And airlines or flights were cancelled. So you don't have the luxury of time to give your employees warning or to sit down and come up, with a workable solution to this kind of a pandemic. Some of the businesses, closed immediately, and some people were rendered jobless, immediately. So at the end of it all, how would this pandemic leave the job market in Kenya?
A lot of effort is going to really come from the government. That's for sure. Of course, they have announced some measures to cushion employers during this period. But before we even start talking of a post-COVID environment, really the government must think on the economic model that we are going to adopt for us to save the jobs that we have. A single employer, the way you've put it, is that when this pandemic came, nobody expected it. But of course, the issue of notification and all that, of course, sometimes it may not happen. But remember, in March, when it was, the business was running a little bit for some sectors, and therefore employers were able to plan from there because of what they had seen happening in other countries. So the government really, even now, I think the government must be working on a plan we call a post-COVID pandemic restructuring plan, or maybe a committee in place that is working on that, so that after this crisis is over, we don't find again ourselves in a situation where we are struggling. Where do we start? How do we move forward? How do we deal with employees? How do we deal with the labor sector? So this is the time we need either a planning committee in place, encompassing all the stakeholders, and looking at which sector of the economy do we need to revive first, and where do we need to put more money? Do we need to put more money in healthcare in the first place? Do we need to put money more in innovation? Of course, a lot of things have happened during this COVID-19, and do we need to put money in that kind of business? And where is the economy hit most, and which part of the economy or sector of the economy we need to focus on without necessarily disrupting what we call environmental degradation and all such kind of things that may follow after the COVID-19. So we need a committee in place, I think, at the moment of experts to work on the model that we are going to use post-COVID, because of course we know this thing will not persist forever, so that now we are aware. And I think that is the only way that we can now start talking of what happens to labor.
What happens to labor?
Yes.
George, as we wind up, tell me, from where you stand, as employers, the fact of the matter is some jobs will never be the same again.
Very true.
Others will never come back to life again.
Very true.
Which are these jobs?
There are various jobs, of course, that may not really come back as they used to be, because right now, for this short period, people have started working from home. And employers have invested in this virtual or teleconferencing. And they're finding it actually a model that they can adopt, and that's what they're discussing. So in various sectors, you may find that most people really may work from home. Most people, machines may take over. For example, in the banks right now, if you look at the rate at which they want to use, they're using technology, there's a likelihood that we may end up having in a branch maybe 2 people. So most guys in that sector, they may not really be employed. They have to look for a job somewhere else. There are jobs like in the hospitality industry or tourism industry. People do booking online. I don't need an agent, right? So there are jobs that really will not survive for long. That is for sure. But of course, it's too early to say which one, and unless now we do the mapping and realize where have employers invested now more during this period, and they may not need. I think that's a research that needs to be done, so that now we inform the people who are out there that, look, you may have to look for different jobs. Otherwise, after this, your jobs may not really be there. You can see even going to court nowadays, we do it from the comfort of our offices, all right? Despite the technological hitches here and there, but we have started doing it from our offices, where I can file my case from where I'm seated. I argue my case from where I'm seated with the judge who is seated in his. So in between, do we need the go between, like the clerks and all that? So it means things may change, and a lot of people will be negatively affected. That's what I'm saying. We need to have a committee to work on a program that will look at the jobs that will be lost and where we can actually put these people, other than now letting them again rot out there.
George, shukran for joining us here.
Thank you so much.
Very much, and we hope that your job will not be one of those that will be affected.
I hope so too.
Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you very much.
George Masese is a senior legal officer at Federation of Kenya Employers, joining us here tonight. Well, let's move on, where social media giant Facebook has appointed Kenya's human rights activist Maina Kiai to serve as board member of the newly created Oversight Board for Facebook and Instagram Content. Kiai is among the first 20 members to join the independent body, which will govern appeals from Facebook and Instagram users and questions from Facebook itself. Details next.
Given the increasingly complex and contentious debates about what types of content should and should not be permitted on Facebook and Instagram, including challenges regarding safety of users online, the Oversight Board will tackle cases that potentially impact many users of social media, especially Facebook and Instagram. Kiai, who currently serves as Director of Human Rights Watch's Global Alliances and Partnerships Program, will for a period of 3 years work in collaboration with 19 other members who speak over 27 languages and have diverse professional, cultural, political, and religious backgrounds and viewpoints, and are independent from Facebook, funded by an independent trust, and cannot be removed by Facebook based on their decisions. Meanwhile, real estate company Banda Homes has broken its silence over what its clients who bought homes from the company said was an elaborate scheme of looting 3.9 billion shillings they paid to the firm 2 years ago. Reports indicated that the developer had signed agreements with its clients to deliver projects at Pinewood and Rosewood Estates through off-plan agreements along Kenyatta Road off Thika Superhighway. The firm CEO Andrew Kamau has denied any fraud involvement.
Compared to the funds that we are yet to collect from customers, that are about 45 to 60% of the value of the project, right? That means that these customers will pay, we will finish the projects and move on. So let those people who have balances, hurry up. We do not want, to agitate other people. Let us know that we are in this collectively.
The real estate company is fighting fraud claims after failing to deliver houses in time despite receiving money from the clients for 2 consecutive years. Each client is said to have paid the company 3.9 million shillings for 1,000 units in the estates. Units, they said, remain stalled for 2 years after making the agreements.
As a company moving forward, and we anticipate this to be until around December, we are not going to sell any more project until we have satisfactorily handed over the project that we are currently running to their respective clients. Until then, we are not going to be involved in any more sales or any more projects.
Kabau insisted that only 35% of collective work in the project remains incomplete, further highlighting that clients owned the company between 45 and 60% unpaid funds that has slowed a project implementation. Alan Auko, Channel 1 Business.
Across the borders, where Uganda has secured $491 million emergency loan from the International Monetary Fund to help cushion its economy from the impact of the new coronavirus.
Key sectors of Uganda's economy, such as tourism, have taken a heavy blow from the crisis. The effect has been compounded by a lockdown of the entire population to curb the spread of the virus. According to IMF, the weakening economic conditions emanating from COVID-19 pandemic have put significant pressures on revenue collection, expenditure, reserves and exchange rate, creating urgent large external and fiscal financing needs. The IMF's emergency financial support under the Rapid Credit Facility, along with the additional donor financing, is expected to help address Uganda's urgent balance of payments and budget support needs. Meanwhile, South Africa does not want a fire sale of the assets of the troubled national airline SAA, nor for the carrier to be liquidated. Public Enterprises Minister Pravin Gordhan has said. Gordhan told a parliamentary committee that the government was in talks with rescue specialists in charge of the state-owned South African Airways on how best to save the airline, which entered a form of bankruptcy protection in December. Rescue specialists said in April that SAA faced being wound down or liquidated as they had run out of funds, but Gordhan reiterated that the government wanted to see SAA restructured into a new airline. 2 trade unions are seeking court action to try to block layoffs at SAA. The matter is expected to be heard on Thursday. SAA has not been profitable since 2011 and has received more than $1.07 billion in bailouts in the past 3 years, a drain on public resources at a time of weak economic growth. And the World Bank says China-based Liaoning Electronic Equipment Company Limited would be ineligible to participate in bank-funded projects for 20 months due to the fraudulent practices in connection with a project in Zambia. The debarment is part of a settlement under which the company acknowledged responsibility for failing to disclose a conflict of interest and other sanctionable practices and agreed to carry out remedial actions. The case involves the Lusaka Transmission and Distribution Rehabilitation Project in Zambia, which was designed to increase the capacity and improve the reliability of the electricity transmission and distribution system in Lusaka, the capital. World Bank debarments typically run for 3 years, but it said it shortened the period to 20 months because the company was cooperating and had agreed to develop an integrity compliance program consistent with the World Bank guidelines.
On to sports now, where Nairobi City Stars, led by head coach Sanjay Alajic, has expressed its delight following the promotion of the club from the National Super League to the Kenyan Premier League. Come next season, City Stars were relegated from the top tier in 2016 after managing just 19 points from the 30 games played and ended up finishing at the bottom of the table.
Nairobi City Stars' promotion to the Kenya Premier League was confirmed on April 30th by Football Kenya Federation. The federation opted to end the league owing to the COVID-19 pandemic and argued there is no chance of football being played either in May or June. City Stars had been impressive before football and other sports were suspended back in March, having played 26 matches and managed to get 20 wins, 4 draws and just 2 losses. However, since the federation used the first round results to crown the winner, since 75 of matches had not been played as per the rules, the club managed to collect 43 points from 18 matches. They had managed 13 wins, 4 draws and a loss. Bidco United have also been promoted after finishing second on the log with 36 points after playing the same number of matches. Vihiga United will play KPL side Kisumu All-Stars in a 2-leg promotion-relegation playoff.
Elsewhere, NBA teams are expected to get the go-ahead to reopen practice facilities for limited use as early as Friday, less than 2 months after the coronavirus outbreak forced the suspension of the season. However, practice sessions are unlikely to resemble business as usual for the NBA, but would be a step towards normalcy for a league whose season was upended in dramatic fashion in March. As few as 3 NBA teams are reportedly planning to allow players into team facilities on Friday. Teams must also thoroughly disinfect any equipment used, from basketballs to weight room equipment. Reports indicate that NBA Commissioner Adam Silver and National Basketball Players Association Executive Director Michelle Roberts will hold a call on players on Friday to discuss the plans. On to football now, where the Bundesliga will resume behind closed doors on Saturday, 16th May, and is the first European league to restart following the coronavirus shutdown. One of the games on the day of relaunch will be the derby between Schalke and Borussia Dortmund. Champions Bayern Munich, who are 4 points clear at the top of the table, travel to Union Berlin on Sunday. Most teams have 9 games to play, with the final weekend of the season scheduled for 27th to the 28th of June. The German Football Association said the season would resume under strict health protocols that bans fans from the stadium and requires players to have COVID-19 testing. Around 300 people, including players, staff and officials, will be on around the stadiums during the match days. The game is likely to resume anytime soon. Well, elsewhere, Dutch Health Minister Hugo de Jong says fans will not be able to attend football matches in the Netherlands until there is a coronavirus vaccine. Sports in the country is currently in a standstill due to the virus, and the Dutch government have banned all sporting events until September 1st at the earliest. The decision resulted in the Eredivisie being ended prematurely with no champions and no relegation. De Jong wrote to the Dutch Parliament to explain that even if the government chooses to allow sporting events to resume from September, fans will not be present. The Eredivisie was ended following an announcement from Prime Minister Mark Rutte stating all football matches are forbidden until September the 1st. Well, and on that sporting note, we come to the end of Business Insight for today. Thank you so very much indeed for joining us tonight. Remember to stay at home, wash your hands, and exercise social distancing. My name is O'Brien Kimani. Later on, in about 10 minutes or 15 minutes from now, we have Inside Government. We look at the investment climate here in Kenya with Ken Invest Managing Director Moses Ikiara. Stay right here. Have a good night.